My name is Alex Cassano, and I'm the events coordinator here at the Clearwater Historical Society. Today we will be having Jay Rhodes. Jay Rhodes served as a funeral director in St. Petersburg. He'll be talking about funeral history, so I hope you enjoy this presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Jay Rhodes here, and the mask is coming off, but I just wanted to make sure you knew what era we were doing this program in. Totally weird. So I've got COVID brain. The fact of the matter is, I think you can get that when you're around formaldehyde too much. So anyway, I've been a funeral director for a number of years now. I don't even want to think about that. 1970 I was licensed. Yeah, 73, I'm sorry, 73. I was at South Florida and graduated 73. So in any event, I was wondering what would be historical about me that I could share as an introduction. And the fact is, John S. Rhodes III, the third of John S's, and my grandfather was a historical figure in St. Petersburg, past National Funeral Directors President, FFDA, Florida Funeral Directors Association, just a real big shooter. And he purchased the Alexander Funeral Home in Clearwater back when I was born. And so born in St. Anthony's Hospital in St. Petersburg, and 2 weeks later, I didn't know it, but I was living in Clearwater. And not long after the acquisition was made that year, it was in process while I was being born, I guess. They moved into the funeral home. And I lived with my family upstairs for like 10 years, yeah. And it was very interesting, and I'll date it for you. We used to walk the neighborhood a lot, and down 1137 Northeast Cleveland Street towards 5 Points, got it? Or Burdett's Corner, if you'd prefer. There was the Ford dealer. And I forget, it wasn't Chick Smith, I can tell you that. But the bottom line is, we were looking at this really strange car, and of course it flopped. The Edsel. And we went back and talked about that. And I was the oldest of 5 children, and so there's a picture of 3 of us, the other 2 weren't born yet, in front of the brand new funeral home, and I'm there in my first communion outfit, all white, with white shorts, and you know, it's like, really, okay. Same fellow that my dad got tired of my crying and carrying on about being bullied by some couple of kids who were a little older than I was, and so after watching the Friday night fights with my dad, he was teaching me how to box, and he purchased the body bag and the speed bag, and I got pretty good. And with my long arm, I actually had an advantage over these other kids. And so the thing is, Dad was a little creative, so we had a mat like this, about 4 feet, something like that long, and he said, no swinging unless both your feet are on the mat. Well, that turned out to be my advantage because their arms didn't match up. So it didn't take but a couple of seconds, fight's over, and they stopped bullying me. And anyway, so that was what living in that neighborhood was like. I still drive it as a nostalgic drive around to avoid traffic sometimes on Drew Street or Cleveland, whatever. It also brings back other memories because I was the last class at Clearwater Junior High School. The experience there was awesome. I was always involved in activities, but it got so it was even more so when I went there because Joan Bernazzi, who was a real live wire, she was good friends with my aunt, and we all played golf. There you go, and that was the connection. And she convinced me to go to Clearwater Junior High instead of staying at St. Cecilia's for 8th grade and so forth. So I did. It was a good move. I ended up being editor of the co-editor of the newspaper, the yearbook. I lost my run for presidency of the student body, but whatever. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of activity, and it's where I learned to play volleyball. So I wouldn't have learned that where I was, and I've enjoyed that for a long time. So in any event, the history that I have developed in the business revolves around a couple of activities. I was the past president of the Academy of Professional Funeral Service Practice. Actually, the first one, because the organizing body was in Florida, and there was 4 old-timers that asked me to a meeting, and the next thing you know, I'm walking out as the first president of this new academy. And it's based on practitioners getting certified funeral service practitioner designation, and there was like 5 categories that you had to write essays on that proved you were a professional and you were developing and learning and teaching and all that. Well, I ended up as president, as I mentioned, and I was sitting with our executive director grading all these essays, and I said, you know what, Sally, let's trade papers and see if we get the same grades. And we didn't. I was licensed, she wasn't, she didn't have the perspective. So I said, you know what, let's do 2 things. One, be more accurate, and faster. And so we created a little questionnaire. And it was bingo bongo. So that tripled our membership in short order because it was more convenient and more accurate for the practitioners to participate. I've been a past president of the Florida Funeral Directors, and as well, following my grandfather's footstep, but he did it twice. Once was enough. and then what I really like to do is teach, what I practice. And to give you a rough idea, when there's new products that come into our field, and you say, well, what could be new about embalming supplies? Well, there are new things. And there was one thing in particular for restorative art over the years. If somebody had a problem, they would just wax it. You can think of the problem with wax, right? Somebody comes up, where was that hole? And they push, screw it up, right? Or some folks, it's not my bag, but they like to kiss the deceased. And if you've done, repair on lips with wax, first kiss is over, right? So Easy Way was born right as I sold my funeral homes in 1995. I had purchased some but didn't get a chance to use it. And then 3 months into this new job as a Dodge salesman, I'll tell you a bit about that, the office sends out a note, we're going to be the distributors for Easy Way. So I went right down to my old place. I don't sell anything until I practice with it. And I said, okay, guys, you still have that kit? Yeah. You're not using it? No. Nobody taught them, right? So we had a little class right there, and they happened to have a person that, a decedent that needed some repair work. And with the timing was excellent. They were so happy they didn't have to do it. And when we were done, they were quite happy. To shorten this up for the non-technical folks out there, we now have taken this to a point where if somebody's missing, say, part of an ear, when I'm done, you can come up and do this and not figure out which one was replaced. That's how authentic you can make it. It's really been awesome. So it appeals to my creative nature, and I like helping folks out, and the technical assistance is appreciated and is good for my business, which is traveling West and South Florida, calling on funeral homes, and I present the newer products for the Dodge Chemical Company, established 125 plus years ago. I like old things, right? And really a nice family. One of the Dodges, Arnold Dodge, hired me. Sat with my. They used to have a tradition where they'd host you as you began your training at the office. They'd fly you to Dodge. And so I had dinner with his brother Mike, and Arnold and their wives at on Belmont Circle. Yeah, that's where they lived. It was awesome. So, in Cambridge. So, anyway, interesting history for sure. And now I've got a situation where, I answer my phone 7 days a week because, it's nice to take orders on Saturday and Sunday just as well, but those tend to be the most critical days when somebody's stuck and they have some work to do and are needing advice or assistance. To the point sometimes I end up, based on where they are and the timing, I can actually help them do the work, have an on-site, hands-on class. There we go. So, programs that I presented cover the spectrum, and it's sort of interesting. I wasn't thinking about this until I popped up an outline of a course that I wrote called Embalming Paradigms and Paradigms Challenge. It's a 6 hours continuing education course if you're interested, but you got to be licensed. So, in any event, National Funeral Directors Association, Florida Funeral Directors, Independent Funeral Directors, Florida Morticians, the Georgia Academy of Graduate Embalmers, the British Institute of Embalmers, and many other local organizations back before all this stuff has happened with COVID, and before that even some of the other issues with CEU providers, sort of cheapening the process. You don't have to take a class. I could give each of you this one CEU program, and you could take it and pass with a 75 easily. Just, how to take 4, A, B, C, D choices. You knock out 2 that are obviously not going to work, and you easily can figure out one of the other 2 at the worst 75% of the time. I am not happy with it, but for its effectiveness, nobody learns anything. So, in any event, the associations, like Pinellas County had an association, Polk, etc. I'd travel around and do programs with those folks, and that was a lot of fun getting the interaction. Today, my fun is to teach folks how to use a product that's new more effectively and maybe in different ways than they're used to. But for me, the feedback teaches me things. So I've actually learned a couple of very interesting techniques that I now teach because clientele has told me what they were doing with the newest product that I hadn't even thought about. So a lot of fun. I won't go into all that, with this group, but you sort of get the idea. We have, we have a few historic situations, I think. First of all, we have records here for the death records from Alexander, and hopefully I'll get the ones from Rhodes. They have a situation now where that facility probably will disappear, and hopefully I'll be able to get those donated, the hard copies, and keep the girls working on copying. So anyway, you can go to the Genealogical Society, the Largo Library, and online is more convenient if you want to track genealogy. And then here we go, that's what I was looking for. So we have had Moss Funeral Home since 1932. And Jack Moss was a philanthropist, an all-around nice guy. And when I came along and had to compete with him, I did so because I had gotten word that they were going to sell to SCI, a big corporation, and I knew it could compete with that. And they kept putting it off, and I had already started the groundwork, and I was getting nervous that I was going to be stuck competing against Jack Moss. Well, they finally closed the deal, and I was able to move ahead with the plan. So one of the things you do when you're in a situation trying to increase your business, where is the business? Who are you going to get it from? So I happened to build a place right across from St. Cecilia's Catholic Church where I was a member, and they were doing a lot of traditional funerals. They could support a funeral home just doing those funerals. But, that wasn't quite enough. So I started, as I grew the business, hiring key people. Here's a figure, and I apologize to anybody I'm going to miss out there if you are watching this program and you were one of the ones that helped me, but I had a list I had written, and I left it on my desk. I'll pick on one. Gwen Ashley, she was like in the 90s, where she spearheaded our Pursuit of Excellence application, and we won third place in the nation. And the cool part was when I pointed out who we were competing against, I said, Gwen, you beat SCI's biggest and best firm that does all the prominent people out of New York City, Frankie Campbell. And you maybe even heard that name before. Really a distinguished operation. So, we got, whoa, into that. That was cool. The hires that were really interesting. Okay, I was finding, gee, I'm not really doing very much, if anything, out of Calvary Baptist Church. And so I turned around at the direction of one of my associates that I would call to come in and drive a hearse or a limousine, who was neighbors with a really nice guy, Al Wallace. And Al and Mary Wallace were a team. They were really super. And lo and behold, I started doing some Calvary business because people liked Al. And they knew he was going to be on their limousine. So, that's the kind of thing I did. The Clearwater Cemetery caretaker, or I'm not sure that's quite, he had a bigger and better title than that, but Bob Motti, another fine gentleman, and I figured, what the heck, he's been around and knows all these people that are being buried out there, and so I hired him, and that helped out. So you get the idea, and let's see if I have any others on the list like that. Not at the moment. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, my competition had grown. They had the Fort Harrison Chapel, Lakeside, Dunedin, Largo, and it was interesting, especially when we started doing as much business, or actually a little more, than Fort Harrison. And part of that was the dynamics of, population changes. The people there weren't interested in, calling on a funeral home per se. The bottom line now is it's gone. They razed it. I had, after 70 years, so in 2009, I guess it was, I'm sorry, 2013. 2013, it was taken down. So then the other thing that I started doing, looking around the dynamics of this, I told you about Mr. Moss. Well, he loved to play cards. He was always in the card room. He didn't play golf at Clearwater Country Club. And so that gave me an opportunity to play golf there and meet folks. Clinton, I'm sorry. And I also went to Pelican, but I couldn't get into Bel Air because, I didn't qualify for membership there. Mr. Manuel, I'd be a veto there. But Clinton Holden, anybody remember him by chance? Really a nice guy. I was in school with his son at St. Cecilia's, and he was involved all the way around from Rotary, Casado Club. You know Casado Club, right? Just the in people. You don't know Casado Club? Okay, folks, that's Clearwater history, and it's still active. You've got to be invited to join, and it's pretty exclusive. I haven't been asked. So anyway, that's how exclusive it is. So there. But a lot of nice folks out there. They meet at Carlowell. Okay, Casado Club. So he was involved with them, past president. He was just an all-around nice guy. And, all right, so the rest of the development for historical is funeral homes of color. Okay, and black, African American, whatever you're comfortable with. And I was talking to Bob Young about this a bit, and he helped me put together a little bit of a history. So back in the 20s, now remember Alexander did one when they opened up in the mid-20s, 27, 90, and 27. But there was actually a funeral home, Williams Funeral Home, which then became Arch Royal, and then Sanchez Arch Royal, and then back to Arch Royal for a bit, I believe, but because Sanchez went to St. Pete. And there was Larkins that started in the early 50s, and Bob Young worked there, and in 75 he opened his funeral home down on Howard and Greenwood / MLK. Sylvan Abbey, they have to get a little credit from one point of view, and I didn't look up when they started, but it's not one of the oldest, but the cemetery is very historic.
1887.
Yeah, pardon me?
1887 or 1890.
Yeah. And but the funeral home came along, it's not that old. And then the private ownership, the Johnson family sold, and now it's owned by SCI, I believe. Yeah. So in any event, been a few changes as things have gone along. We had a couple of funeral homes that have come and gone and didn't have any history, and they weren't that old anyway. So I didn't try and catalog a handful of those. What kind of questions have I raised? Anybody have a question?
Prior to regular automobile hearses,
Yeah.
What kind of transportation did they do here in Clearwater?
Well, they came along when motorized hearses were available. I'm not sure they were running the carriages. Now you can see, if you drive by Dobie's Funeral Home up in Tarpon Springs, he has an old one, horse-drawn carriage sitting out as part of his logo. Anderson McQueen in St. Pete has one. I don't know if they're displaying it anymore or not. But that's sort of what they've become, just an oddity to share the history. So some people use them in their logos. So okay, anything else? Anybody? Well, I think I've covered the history as far as I'm going to get it.